Welcome back. This is part 2 of our series, What If Harry Potter Never Went to Hogwarts? Now, if you're seeing this and you haven't watched part 1 yet, what are you doing here? You're jumping into the middle of a war. Hit the link on the screen, go back to the beginning, and see how this boy who lived got here. For everyone else, Harry has just collapsed in the bunker, and a voice from the darkness has finally found him. Let's begin. Harry wakes to the rhythmic hum of air filtration fans, the high, chilling voice from his vision finally receding into the back of his mind. He finds himself in a small, sterile room deep within the bunker, where the light is clinical and the air carries the heavy, dry scent of reinforced concrete. Albus Dumbledore sits by the bedside, his shadow stretching long and thin against the walls like a silent sentinel. The old man watches Harry with an intense, quiet focus, allowing a heavy silence to hang between them before finally breaking the tension. Dumbledore mentions Harry's instinctive ability to manipulate magic without a wand, noting that while such a talent exists, it is an extraordinary feat for a boy left to survive on the streets. The praise causes the tide in Harry's blood to rise with a fresh wave of anger, as he realises he has been an object of study for a very long time. He thinks of Lydia, re-evaluating every shared meal at the orphanage, as a piece of a cold, calculated betrayal. Harry looks directly at the man who pulled the strings of his life, and demands to know how long he has been hiding in the shadows. Dumbledore admits that Harry was never truly out of his sight, confirming that Lydia was placed at the orphanage specifically to act as his guardian. He reveals they only lost track of him for 2 years, until a contact spotted him performing his tricks at the White Horse pub. Harry's resentment boils over as he questions if Lydia's kindness was merely a job, but Dumbledore's expression turns sharp and cold, warning Harry that he has crossed a line. He informs Harry that Lydia's story and her sacrifices are our own to tell, and they are not secrets for him to give away. When Harry demands to leave the tunnels immediately, Dumbledore informs him that he must remain underground until the Order decides his fate. Harry asks if they are simply waiting to see if he is destined to become another Dark Lord. Dumbledore meets his gaze with a faint, enigmatic twinkle in his eye, offering a simple maybe before leaving the room. The days bleed into weeks. To pass the time and map the layout of his new prison, Harry begins to wander into the deeper veins of the station, until he finds himself in a large, hollowed-out cavern where the tracks once met. He notices a crowd already gathering, the air thick with a restless, electric energy as people congregate around a raised central platform. As Harry leans against the cold stone of the tunnel entrance to watch, a shadow detaches itself from the darkness beside him. It is the man with the sunken cheeks and wild eyes he noticed upon his arrival, Sirius Black, though he looks more trimmed and put together than he did in the shadows of the infirmary. Sirius doesn't look at Harry with the clinical curiosity of Dumbledore or the pity of the others. He looks at him with a raw, desperate sort of pride. He tells Harry that he knew his father, and that James Potter would have been just as restless in a cage like this. He explains that this is the dueling arena, a place where the students showcase what they have learned and blow off a little steam in a grand, violent spectacle. Sirius notes the contrast in their worlds. While Harry learned magic to survive and perform, these people use it as a sharp, polished blade. Sirius gestures towards the platform, his voice low and raspy, as he begins to break down the mechanics of the fight unfolding before them. He points out Ron Weasley, the challenger, who fights with a desperate, brawling energy, but Sirius warns that Ron's tendency to use anger as a shield is dangerous, as a shield made of rage eventually cracks. On the opposite side stands Cedric Diggory, the reigning champion, who moves with a grace Harry can barely follow. Cedric doesn't just cast spells, he weaves them, deflecting Ron's attacks with effortless flicks of his wrist while remaining calm and focused. Sirius tells Harry to watch Cedric's feet, explaining that true magic isn't just about the wand, but about the balance of the body and the stillness of the mind. The duel is intense, with Ron throwing stunning spells and bursts of fire, but Cedric moves like a dancer, predicting every move before it's made. With a final blinding flash of golden light, Cedric disarms Ron, yet immediately offers a hand to help him up. Sirius leans in closer, whispering that Harry's street mage instincts are actually a form of combat that purebloods have forgotten. He tells Harry that if he wants to survive what is coming, he needs to stop hiding the tide in his blood and start sharpening it into a weapon. Sirius offers that he and Lupin will take over Harry's training personally. promising to help him master the power he has carried alone for so long, provided Harry chooses to stay. Harry watches from the shadows, and for the first time his anger begins to fade as he realizes magic can be more than a burden or a trick for coins. It can be a language and a craft. He looks at his holy wand and realizes how much more powerful he could be if he understood the rules. He is tired of being the one who is watched, tired of being the ghost. He decides then and there to stop running and start studying, vowing to become better than Cedric, and a wizard that even Voldemort will have to fear. A few months pass in the damp, humming silence of the underground. Harry throws himself into his studies with Sirius and Lupin with a clinical focus. He consumes books on hexes, ancient charms, and defensive theory as if they are bread he used to scavenge for. He makes rapid progress, his street mage instincts allowing him to grasp the flow of magic faster than those who grew up with it. But as his skills grow, so does his frustration. He asks to join the Dueling Club, to test himself against Cedric or the older students, but the answer is always the same: no. To the Order, he is a relic, a fragile glass prince who must be kept safe at all costs, though Harry doesn't understand why. Apart from Sirius and Lupin, Harry's only other real connection is Ron. They spend long nights in the hollowed-out tunnels, bonded by a shared silence and the weight of what they have lost. Ron is a boy made of jagged edges and trauma, his temper always a second away from boiling over. He still speaks of his sister, Ginny, in the present tense, catching himself only when the silence reminds him she is gone. Harry understands the fire in Ron's eyes. It is the same heat that once burned in the cupboard under the stairs. They don't talk about their feelings, they talk about the war. Ron doesn't treat Harry like a relic or a glass prince. He treats him like a fellow survivor. Ron mentions Lydia's name, watching as Harry immediately turns away to hide the fresh surge of resentment. Ron speaks of the suffocating silence Ginny left behind, admitting he would trade everything for a single minute to say the things he never got to say. He warns Harry that in their world, every conversation carries the weight of potentially being the last. Ron explains the invisible burden Lydia carries as a squib, living in a world of magic she can see but never touch. He reveals that taking Harry to the wand shop wasn't a calculated order from Dumbledore, but a choice Lydia made entirely on her own. She stood by and watched Harry obtain the one thing she is destined never to have, all because her belief in him is stronger than her own loss. Ron leaves the tunnel without waiting for an answer, his footsteps echoing against the damp stone. Harry remains in the shadows, staring into the dark as he begins to weigh Ron's words against the cold knot of anger in his chest. Lydia has been a ghost in Harry's life. He sees her in the distance, working with the Squib network, but every time she approaches to apologise, he turns away. The sting of her betrayal as a knot in his chest he refuses to untie. That changes in the dead of night. Harry is jolted awake by a hand over his mouth. It is Lydia. Her face is pale and her voice is sharp with a terrifying urgency. She tells him to get up and follow her. She doesn't explain until they are deep in the service tunnels. She tells him the Death Eaters have finally traced his past. They found the White Horse. They found Sandra, the woman from the pub who gave him a chance when he was starving. They move through the city like shadows, slipping through the back alleys Harry once called home. They sneak into the pub through the cellar entrance. The air inside, once smelling of warm ale and wood smoke, now smells of ozone and fear. In the centre of the dark room, Sandra sits frozen in a chair. Her eyes are wide, filled with a silent, screaming terror. 3 Death Eaters sit at a nearby table, their masks discarded, laughing as they talk about the little performer they are waiting for. He begins to crawl towards her, his holy wand gripped tight, intending to cut her loose and vanish back into the night. A floorboard creaks. One of the Death Eaters turn, his eyes locking onto Harry's. Harry doesn't wait, he doesn't freeze. He explodes into motion. He rises with a grace that shocks even Lydia. He doesn't use the stiff, formal movements he was taught in the underground. He moves like a street fighter. He sends a stunning spell at the first man before the Death Eater can even reach for his wand. The red light fills the pub, and the man is lifted off his feet, crashing into the bar. The second Death Eater lunges, shouting a curse, but Harry drops to one knee, letting the binding curse sail over his head. He flickers his wand in a jagged arc, and a blast of kinetic energy sends the second man through a window and into the street. The third Death Eater is faster. He is a veteran of the war. With a brutal flick of his wrist, he sends a silent curse that catches Harry in the chest, knocking him backward. Harry's wand skitters across the floor, out of reach. The Death Eater stands over him, his wand tip glowing with a sickly white light. He sneers, savouring the moment he captured the ghost of Privet Drive. Suddenly, a shadow lurges from behind the bar. Lydia doesn't have magic, but she does have a bottle of heavy gin. She smashes it with a sickening thud against the back of the man's head. The Death Eater's eyes roll back, and he collapses into a heap. The room is silent again, save for the sound of broken glass. Harry scrambles to his feet, retrieves his wand, and quickly breaks the freezing charm on Sandra. There is no time for a reunion. He tells her to run, to go to a specific address where the squibs will find her. As Harry and Lydia sprint back toward the safety of the tunnels, the adrenaline begins to fade. Lydia looks at Harry, her breath coming in ragged gasps, as she attempts to process the violence she has just witnessed. She speaks of her shock, admitting she has never seen anyone move with such visceral, unpredictable lethality. She observes that his time in the underground hasn't just made him a wizard, it has forged him into a weapon the Death Eaters are completely unprepared to face. Harry doesn't thank her, but for the first time in a long time, he doesn't look away when she speaks. When Harry and Lydia return to the underground station, they are not met with praise. Dumbledore is waiting for them, his face a mask of cold, controlled fury. He tells them that their reckless mission risks the safety of every person in the tunnels. Lydia does not back down. She takes the full blame, standing tall even though she has no magic to defend herself. She tells Dumbledore that if they spend all their time hiding while the people who cared for them are tortured, then the Resistance has already lost its soul. She asks him what the point of a Chosen One is if he isn't allowed to save anyone. Without waiting for an answer, she storms out of the room, leaving a heavy silence behind. Harry stands in the heavy silence, the term Chosen One repeating in his head, like a question he doesn't know how to answer. He looks at Dumbledore with a quizzical gaze, seeking the truth behind a name and a destiny he never chose. Dumbledore meets his eyes, the harshness of his cold fury suddenly replaced by a sharp, familiar twinkle. He tells Harry that the path of the Chosen One is a story that is still being written and has yet to be fully decided. Dumbledore turns and abruptly storms out of the room, leaving Harry alone in the dim light of the bunker, with a new and terrifying weight on his shoulders. It is July 31st, and Harry is now 16 years old. He expects another quiet day of research, but Ron and Lydia have orchestrated a different kind of gift. They have convinced the dueling instructors that it is time to stop protecting Harry and to start testing him. Sirius Black stands with the instructors, a wide, mischievous smile on his face. He tells Harry that his contribution to the birthday surprise is the choice of opponent, a true baptism of fire. The entire student body of the underground resistance gathers in the Great Cavern, the air thick with excitement and nerves. Most of the crowd is betting against Harry, viewing him as an urban legend with plenty of potential but no real experience. Cedric Diggory stands on the opposite side of the platform, the golden boy of the resistance, looking calm and formidable. Harry turns to Sirius, his shock contained within the mention of Cedric's name. Sirius looks back with a grin, admitting that while the odds of a victory are tiny, a win for Harry would cost show the room what a Potter is capable of. He tells Harry to do him proud. The duel begins, and the crowd is immediately shocked. Cedric does not play his usual game of waiting and defending. He goes on a brutal spells with a speed that forces Harry to move. Cedric is not treating Harry like a child. He is treating him like an equal threat. Harry meets every blast with a counter-curse. He moves with a jagged, unpredictable grace, using the uneven floor of the cavern to his advantage. The duel becomes a blur of red, blue and gold light, until Cedric decides to bring the fight to a definitive end. He draws deep into his power and casts his strongest spell, a great golden roar of pure, blinding white energy. It charges across the platform like a physical wall of magic, intended to crush Harry's defences and finish the match. Harry doesn't flinch, he does what feels natural to him. He lowers his wand and opens his palm, allowing the tide in his blood to become a silent vacuum that pulls the very light out of the air. The crowd watches in shock as Cedric's massive spell is literally inhaled by the darkness surrounding Harry, plunging the entire cavern into a split second of absolute terrifying silence. Inside Harry, the absorbed energy rages like a trapped storm, and he realizes with a jolt of fear that if he released the full weight of it, Cedric would be destroyed where he stands. He closes his eyes and desperately tries to bleed off only a tiny fraction of the power, intending a gentle strike just to end the match. But even that small shard of magic erupts from his wand with a devastating, unpolished force that hits Cedric like a physical blow from a giant. Cedric is thrown back across the cavern, his body skidding over the stone until he hits the far wall with a heavy, sickening thud. The reigning champion has been defeated, but the silence that follows is not one of celebration. It is one of awe and fear. Harry stands in the centre of the platform, his chest heaving and his hand trembling from the sheer volume of power he just channeled. He walks over to a dazed Cedric and offers him a hand, mirroring the gesture Cedric once gave to Ron. As the crowd begins to cheer, Harry looks up and sees Dumbledore watching from the shadows, looking like a man who has just seen a weapon finally sharpened to a dangerous, unpredictable point. The roar of the crowd in the dueling cavern fades as Harry follows Lydia deep into the forgotten veins of the London Underground. They move past the cots and the tactical maps, climbing a rusted service ladder that leads to a narrow ventilation ledge high above the Thames. From this hidden perch, they can see the dark, shimmering water of the river. Lydia reaches into the pocket of her heavy coat and pulls out a small cardboard box containing a humble cake with simple white frosting. She holds it out to him, her eyes reflecting the silver light of the river as she makes a quiet joke about the morning at the orphanage. She warns him to keep his magic in check this time, jokingly claiming she doesn't want to see anyone else floating away over the London skyline. Harry looks at her, the realization hitting him that she has remembered the truth of his power all along. Lydia gives a sad smile and admits that Dumbledore asked her to lie, wanting Harry to believe their reunion was a mere chance meeting. She reveals Dumbledore's plan was to test him, to see if the years spent outside the Order's gaze had twisted him into something dark. She tells Harry that she knew the truth the moment she saw him again, seeing only the boy she believed in. She goes on to say, watching Harry obtain his wand at Ollivander's was the most profound moment of her life, a confirmation for her that he is the one meant to save them. A heavy sadness comes over Harry as he asks about her own past, prompting Lydia to speak of her life before the orphanage. She describes growing up in a prominent wizarding family that waited desperately for her magic to manifest, only to be told on her 10th birthday that she was a squib. She recounts the sting of being abandoned by her own blood, and how Dumbledore found her, giving her a purpose just as he has for so many others in the tunnels. Lydia looks at Harry and confesses that from the first moment they met, she felt a sense of safety she hadn't known since her childhood. In the silence of the ledge, she tells him that in him, she finally felt as though she had found a family of her own. Harry looks at the cake, and then at Lydia. For the first time in his life, the memory of the orphanage doesn't bring a cold weight to his chest. The tide in his blood, which usually feels like a restless storm, becomes calm and steady. As they sit on the edge, the tension of the last year finally breaks. They laugh together, a sound that feels out of place in a world filled with sirens and whispered prophecies. Lydia leans in and kisses him. It is a soft, grounding moment that feels more powerful than any spell Harry has ever cast. With the cold wind of the Thames on his face, Harry feels a transformation. The boy who scavenged for bread and the soldier who defeated Cedric Diggory merge into something new. He no longer feels like a ghost or a pawn. As he looks out over the dark city, Harry feels a surge of invincible strength. He feels as though he could face Voldemort's entire army with nothing but his holy wand and the memory of this moment. Over the following weeks, Lydia and Dumbledore begin leaving on frequent secretive missions. Harry notices the increasing frequency of their departures, but Lydia refuses to share any details of their work. He can see that she wants to tell him everything, but Dumbledore has sworn her to a strict silence she is determined to keep. Before she leaves for her last assignment, she pauses and leaves a soft, grounding kiss on Harry's cheek. The following afternoon, Harry is deep in the training tunnels with Sirius and Lupin. He moves with a newfound precision, blocking and countering spells with the jagged street-learned reflexes he has been sharpening for months. Harry executes a sharp block and follows it with a counterspell that catches Lupin squarely in the chest. Sirius watches with a wide grin, the excitement causing him to accidentally call Harry by his father's name, James. Lupin turns with a patient, knowing look, reminding Sirius that he is confusing the past with the present once again. Sirius offers a quick, sheepish apology before stepping forward to take his turn in the duel. As Sirius fires a flash of red light from his wand, a sudden violent pressure explodes behind Harry's eyes. His defense fails, and the spell hits him squarely in the chest, knocking the air from his lungs as he collapses to the stone. The training room vanishes instantly, replaced by the dark black marble of the Ministry of Magic. He sees Lydia frozen on her knees in the center of a darkened hall, her face twisted in a look of absolute terror. Voldemort stands over her, his presence a chilling shadow that seems to consume the light in the room. The Dark Lord subjects her to the Cruciatus curse, demanding to know the location of Harry Potter, as Lydia's screams echo in Harry's mind. Just as the pain becomes unbearable, Harry is jolted back into his own body, gasping for breath on the floor of the bunker. He frantically describes the vision to Sirius and Lupin, the Ministry, the torture, and the face of the Dark Lord. He ignores their attempts to calm him, refusing their pleas to wait for Dumbledore to return from their joint mission. Harry reminds them that Lydia left with the headmaster, and if she has been captured, it means Dumbledore may already be dead. He tells them he is leaving for the Ministry immediately, and he will go alone if he has to. Sirius and Lupin exchange a grim, silent look, their instincts as protectors finally overriding the Order's strict commands. They agree to go with him, moving through the hidden arteries of the city with a synchronized professional speed. They arrive at the Ministry of Magic, stepping into the massive atrium with their wands drawn and ready for a fight. The arrival at the Ministry is heavy with a suffocating silence that feels like a physical weight against Harry's chest. Before the shadows shift, Sirius looks at Lupin and notes how much the moment feels like the old days, remarking that it feels right to have a Potter standing in the mix once again. This brief moment of connection is shattered as Voldemort emerges from the darkness, flanked by 4 Death Eaters whose silver masks and flowing black robes seem to swallow the remaining light in the hall. Sirius and Lupin instantly move to shield Harry, but with a wordless and effortless flick of his wand, Voldemort catches all 3 of them in a single binding spell. Harry finds himself frozen in place, and though he desperately tries to force his wand hand to move, his muscles remain locked by a power he cannot overcome. The Dark Lord moves closer, observing that Harry's mind is an open book, and mocking his lack of mental defences, telling him he was far too easy to manipulate, before demanding to know where Dumbledore has taken the Horcruxes that were stolen from him. Harry can only stare back in genuine confusion, as the word Horcrux means nothing to him. When Voldemort realises Harry is telling the truth, he turns his wand on Sirius, subjecting him to a brutal torture, while mocking the fact that Dumbledore has kept his chosen one completely in the dark. Harry pleads for the Dark Lord to stop, but Voldemort simply gives him an ultimatum: reveal the location of the Resistance, or watch his godfather die where he stands. Harry panics, his mind racing through every trick he knows, but he stops when he sees Sirius give a tiny, firm shake of his head, silently demanding that Harry remain silent, regardless of the cost. The tension is suddenly broken by a high-pitched scream from the Dark Lord himself, who falls to one knee as if part of his very soul has been struck by an invisible, distant blow. The binding spells snap, releasing Harry and Lupin. Sirius is caught in another binding spell by one of the Death Eaters. Harry doesn't hesitate to aim his holy wand to the recovering monster. Voldemort slashes his wand in a desperate counter, and their spells meet in mid-air, creating a shimmering golden bubble that locks them in a struggle of pure will. While the wands are locked, Lupin engages the Death Eaters to provide cover, finally striking the wizard who holds the curse on Sirius, and releasing him from his restraints. Sirius shouts for Lupin to take Harry and run, lunging forward to physically tackle the Dark Lord and break the connection between the wands. Lupin grabs Harry by the shoulder and shoves him towards the emerald flames of the Floo network, forcing him away from the battle. The last image Harry sees through the spinning light is a final flash of green hitting Sirius's chest, and the peaceful smile on his godfather's face as the light leaves his eyes. Harry and Lupin stumble out of the emerald flames and back into the cold concrete reality of the bunker, their clothes scorched and their spirits broken. Lydia and Dumbledore have come rushing toward them through the dim light of the station, but the words die in their throats when they see Harry's hollow, bloodshot eyes. The silence in the tunnel is absolute, as Lupin quietly informs the ex-headmaster that Sirius is gone, fallen in a battle that was never supposed to happen. Lydia reaches out to embrace Harry, but he flinches away as if her touch is fire, his face twisted in a mask of stinging silent shame. He tells them all that the fault lies with him, admitting his own arrogance in believing he was already powerful enough to face the Dark Lord on his own terms. The guilt becomes a physical weight, and Harry slams his fist against the reinforced wall, the impact cracking the concrete as a shockwave of raw magic ripples through the station. As Harry turns and storms off into the darkness of the corridor, Dumbledore's hand slowly relaxes from the hilt of his wand, his eyes tracking the boy with a look of profound clinical caution. Sitting alone in the suffocating silence of his room, Harry's mind begins to burn with the secrets Dumbledore has kept hidden. Specifically the word Voldemort used, Horcrux. He realises that for all the training and all the talks of destiny, Dumbledore has kept his chosen one on a leash, made of half-truths and shadows. The tide in his blood begins to rise again, no longer a feverish heat, but a cold, crushing pressure that causes the glass on his desk to shatter into dust. He questions how he is expected to save a world that views him only as a weapon to be pointed, but never as a man to be trusted. In the peak of his isolation, a single chilling thought takes hold of his mind, darker than any shadow Voldemort has ever cast. He stares into the void of the bunker and wonders if a world built on the blood of his family and the lies of his mentors is even worth saving at all. And that is where we leave Harry, broken, angry, and questioning everything he was told to believe. The death of Sirius Black has changed the boy who lived forever. I know this was a heavy one, but the stage is now set for the final chapter. Part 3, the finale, will drop this coming Sunday, March 1st. It's been an incredible process building this version of Harry Potter, and I can't wait for you to see how it all ends. If you're as hyped as I am for the conclusion, make sure you're subscribed with notifications on so you don't miss that final upload. Your theories in the comments have been amazing, so let me know what you think Harry's next move is. Thanks for coming on this journey with me, and I'll see you in the Sunday finale. Thanks so much for watching.